Now that you've dove, taken data, and analyzed your results, let's think about what we learned. On the pier pilings, we saw more sea stars and anemones living up close to the top. And then further down, we saw more urchins. This pattern is seen across the world on pier pilings. Let's think about why.
You learn that anemones catch food with their tentacles to get their energy. They also have photosynthetic algae within their skin that turns sunlight into energy. This is why you find anemones near the surface. There's more light up there, which means the algae can produce more energy for the anemone. Urchins are grazers. They scrape food off surfaces, such as pier pilings and rocks, to get their energy. On the pier piling, you don't see many urchins near the surface because that space is occupied by the anemones. Lower down, the algae can grow in that free space, which is why you find the urchins there as well. That's their food source.
Now, what about sea stars? Well, sea stars eat mussels, and mussels live up near the tide line, because when the tide drops and they're exposed to air, they can close up their shells and protect themselves from drying out. This allows the mussels to outcompete any organism that would dry out when the tide drops for a couple hours. And thus, the sea stars live up near the top where their food source is.
Let's think about some trends about where these organisms live. Anemones live near the surface, where the photosynthetic algae in their skin turns light into energy. Urchins live deeper on the pilings, where they can graze on the algae that's growing. Sea stars also live near the surface, where they eat the mussels that grow there. All three animals follow their food source. Do the animals in Coralina Cove follow the same trend?
When we were in Coralina Cove, we looked at horizontal transects. You probably found way more sea stars and sea urchins on the rocky transects than you did on the sandy transects. Why is that?
Rocks are solid surfaces that allow algae to grow on them. This leads to populations of limpets and sea snails that feed off this algae. Sea stars eat sea snails and limpets. So just like with the pier piling, sea stars follow their prey to a hard substrate. Urchins are grazers that eat algae and kelp that also are attached to rocky surfaces. The little holes in rocks also gives them caves to hide from predators, such as fish and sea stars.
Now, what's wrong with living on the sandy surface for these organisms? You learned in your PowerPoint that sea stars and sea urchins use something called tube feet to grip onto the substrate they live. Tube feet are kind of like suction cups. Have you ever tried to use a suction cup on a rock versus sand? It wouldn't grip the sand at all. That would just totally fly off. But on the rock, it can actually grip. Now, we don't want you to think that nothing lives in the sand, because there definitely is life there. Just the things that live in the sandy habitats bury underneath the sand. Because if they were to live on top and not be able to grip down, they would be easy prey for predators to just snatch up and eat. So underneath the sand in the Coralina Cove habitat, there was definitely clams or polychaete worms. We just couldn't see them.
Thanks for diving in with us. We hope you enjoyed being a scientific scuba diver doing research in the ocean. You started by making observations during the exploratory dives. Then you created a hypothesis and predictions based on these hypotheses. We conducted an experiment where you surveyed organisms from different habitats. You graphed and analyzed your results that either supported or didn't support your hypothesis. If they did, that's great. If your data didn't support your hypothesis, that's fine too. Sometimes we learn just as much from being wrong as being right. Scientists are continually testing and revising their hypotheses, trying to figure out what's really going on. For this project, you are a marine biologist, trying to figure out why organisms in the ocean live where they do.
You also communicated your results. This is a really important part of being a scientist. You talked to others about what you found and listened to what they have to say. This can help you figure out what's going on faster. It's also fun. All scientists start out just how you are today, observing, thinking, and talking about how the world works. Keep diving in and you will discover great things, and have fun along the way.